What is up, folks, and welcome to another edition of the ONETA Show, brought to you by PTE Creative. As always, I am your host, Evan Davies. And today on the show, we're just talking modern TV here, man. Because we've got three big shows that have all been released or are still currently being released, or just started, frankly. We're all in three different stages here of big streaming television in some way, shape, or form. So I'm just going to be talking about those three shows here. I've got Bridgerton on the docket. We're going to start with Bridgerton. We're then going to move to Star Wars Acolyte. And then we're going to finish with House of the Dragon with a little bit of prediction kind of stuff like of that nature. That's what we're doing on the show in this technical difficulties filled, crazy scheduled podcast that we have today. So without further ado, I said we're starting with it. Let's go back to 1800s UK. It's Bridgerton time. So, Bridgerton. I feel like 2024 is the year of exploration because had you asked me, do I like Bridgerton? Prior to 2024, I would have said, nah, not really. I would have been, it's fine. I've watched almost every episode because I'm in the room as my wife watches it. And I just have a tendency that if a story's going on, I just kind of pay attention. Whether I think the story's good or bad, if there's a story going on, I want to know what it is. And I got to tell you, I actually really enjoyed Bridgerton Season 3. And I'm not saying I wasn't dying like many people to get to the Part 2 release of the final 4 episodes. However, I was excited. I wanted to see what was going to happen. Because I'll say this right away. Bridgerton is very formulaic. However, a lot of people are just noticing the formula somehow, which is absurd because I don't understand that. Like, season 1 was its own thing and already had very much a formula. Whether you wanted to believe it or not, it had a formula. Season 2, straight formula again. So, I mean, yeah, sure, the characters were different, but it's another formula. And I'm flabbergasted that some people are saying, oh, God, like, it's so formulaic. Of course it's formulaic. It's television. So many shows that we watch and love are formulaic. The funny part about it to me is this. Yes, Bridgerton Season 3 is formulaic. However, they at least play with the formula a lot more, in my opinion. Because the vast majority of these characters that are being focused on in this season are not new. Sure, Cressida is pretty much a new addition for the most part in terms of the character depth, but Penelope has been a focus of the show for 3 seasons. Eloise has been a focus of the show for 3 seasons. Colin has at least gotten some shine to him being a part of the Bridgerton family. They've been building him as well. Going down the rabbit hole of the mother and going down the hole of Mrs. Danbury and her brother. They're at least playing with dynamics of characters and shifting them a bit. And the funny part is the final season or the final parts of season 2 really showed the damage of Lady Whistledown. Whereas season 3, it's far more of this is Penelope's identity. This is how Penelope has a voice in a world where a woman doesn't have a voice. So I thought it was a really interesting fact that if you really look at it, Bridgerton Season 3 very likely could, and unless they blow me out of the water, I might argue probably should have ended as a television show after Season 3 because the payoff has now happened. You've heard this on this podcast multiple times. It doesn't matter if it's during our Smash Bros. Podcast with Angie, if we've gone into other storytelling with Kyle or Christine, if we've gone into storytelling with Dylan, whether we've gone into storytelling just solo here with professional wrestling, or so many other things that I've talked about solo on this show. The payoff is the point of the story. You have to enjoy the journey, but the payoff is the payoff. Once you get the payoff, what do you do next? The ultimate, I give them credit. What happens once everybody learns that Penelope is or what happens once the secret starts to get out. This is the fallout. So where do you go afterwards? I think the really interesting thing is it played with a lot of character dynamics throughout that the payoff was worthwhile. In that, at first it was supposed to be this almost like deep dark secret of, oh God, Penelope, she's she's Lady Whistledown. She's the one that's been gossiping about everybody. Whoa, my God, what are we gonna do? This is such an evil thing. And now it was really shown to be this is her way to express herself. This is her way to be seen in a world where she's never been seen. And then, in an odd way, she finally plays the game a little bit, uses Colin to her advantage, but in the process, the two of them just fall in love. Penelope was obviously in love with him from the start, but Colin truly falls in love with him. Falls in love with Penelope. And at least that is a way in which you can say, oh no, they played those games in season one already. Okay, fine. They did. But it wasn't also the maestro pulling the strings at the same time and then inadvertently falling for this person. Her true intention was to get over him and finally get attention, finally be noticed, and he couldn't handle it because he fell in love with her. And then that's how it happened. And I love the fact that by the midway point of the season, they were already clearly a couple and they were already in. And how do you test that relationship? And you bring out the big secret, you bring out the big guns of him figuring that out, that she is Lady Whistledown. And the fact that you get a complete, it's crazy to say 360 turn from Eloise, but she makes the heel turn towards Penelope, and then she makes the face turn back, to use our wrestling parlance, and the fact that she goes from, this is so hurtful, I can't believe what you did, I can't believe what you did to my family, you're awful, to, don't ever tell anyone, to, I'm so sorry. And don't ever leave this. Don't ever let it go. And I think this is the most personal journey, and you see 3 years of a build, or 3 seasons of a build to the payoff of Penelope as a character. And I think that's the biggest point of any storytelling thing, is the payoff. Is what is the character growth? How did we get to the end? And I think that's the funniest, craziest part about it, is this is why I felt it was a very fitting end, and why I thought it was also high quality, in the fact that you finally got the payoff of an underutilized, or a heavily utilized character in the shadows, and now we revealed them, and why is this important to them? Why are they doing what they're doing? Why is this part so important to them? It's part of their identity. And then to play that into, well, what is she going to choose? Is she going to choose the love of her life? Is she going to choose to be seen? Or is she going to choose the thing that she's built? And in the end, yes, there was some circumstance in there, but she found a way to both keep her voice and have the love of her life by her side. Frankly, I think that's a really, really great way to do it. And the way in which Penelope's entire family flips to understanding her, at least loving her, tolerating her, whatever you want to say the words are based on the sister and the mother, there's at least a turn of care. And when those 3 sisters each have a baby in the end, and Penelope, it goes from the Julie Andrews voice of Lady Whistledown to Penelope's voice as Penelope Bridgerton at the end as the writer. There is a clear character growth and a voice of what they're doing. I think it's a masterful stroke there. And I really appreciated what they were doing, because it was a very worthwhile payoff. There were problems that I had with it. In classic fashion with television, okay, they're together. What do you do now? Well, you got to test them. You got to challenge them constantly. That was one of the things that I really liked up until the latter seasons of How I Met Your Mother, in which I have a whole I could do a whole podcast of hate on How I Met Your Mother, because I think it's one of the worst television endings of all time. I refuse to watch it. I just go, I've seen it once. I watched it in the run, and in my mind, it just goes third to last episode, and that is it. The last two episodes of How I Met Your Mother don't exist. I don't acknowledge them. I think they're trash. I just go. And Robbie and Barney are together, and Ted now has his wife. Great. We've met the mother. Done. Because again, to me, it's an opinion. It's the classic. We're gonna plan this all out, and you don't evolve with what the plan should go to. Sometimes you got to pivot. You got to make changes. In How I Met Your Mother's case, I think they should have pivoted. Where in this case, I thought they did a good job of sticking to their plan, but playing to strengths. They cast a wonderful actress who's phenomenal at playing that duality of this very determined wallflower, but also there's a depth and a heart to her that you don't see in many wallflower style characters. But then she has a fierce care about her and a fierce just being to her, in which she's passionate, she gives a shit, she cares about people, she just shows it sometimes in an odd way, but she's a very loyal friend, she's a very loyal family member, all those kinds of things. It's a very interesting dichotomy. I love the fact that they played to that. They went with the plan, but they played to the strengths instead of going. I thought Eloise had a good level, but I could have swore from other television experiences they would have done a little bit more of, let's keep ratcheting up the tension between Eloise and Penelope. Let's keep putting them in situations that make it harder and harder and harder and harder and harder to live around each other. But instead, it was the right balance. It was the right mixture of, I'm going to challenge you, but I'm not going to overload you with Penelope and Eloise. I really appreciate that. They pivoted away from those kinds of things. And I adored the relationships between Colin and Penelope, and were very valid. The only criticism I would have of that is this: I don't understand the idea the idea spouted off at the end, in which Colin is jealous of Penelope as a writer. Him being a writer is, to my knowledge of the show, not enough. It's not hit home enough that he's trying and he's working very hard, and then there is this inherent jealousy when he finds out, and he can't be successful while she has been, while in secret. I don't get that. I think that's an underdeveloped idea. I think there is fertile ground for that if they wanted to go into it, but now their story's told. There's no more story really there with them outside of really chipping away at something. It's the same thing of, I look at the last season of The Office, in which the show had run its course. They had lost their voice. They had lost Steve Carell as their real guiding force comedically. Too much of the side characters became too much of the focus. And I love all those characters. I love The Office. However, once you hit season 9, it was clear the show needed to stop. But you wanted to watch because you love The Office. And they did in my opinion, one of the mortal sins. You took down characters that had such a cachet and not in the correct way. And you just chipped away at characters that people loved. So the idea, as a writer, you're like, oh, this is so cool. I get to challenge all these conventions, but you're putting strife on somebody, and when you're in someone's home in a story, such as television or a movie, you've built that relationship, you've built those things, you've built betrayals, you've built all these emotions. When a character betrays another one, you have that deep-rooted emotion. It stings as a viewer. When you see a couple get together that you've been rooting for years, you want them to succeed, no different than your own friends and family that have been playing that game with somebody. You want that to succeed as well. The Office didn't do that. Instead, they were like, let's chip away at the two characters people have the most love and affection for. And you don't want to see people that you're equating to a family member or a friend, in this case, as a viewer. you don't want to see them chipped away. You want to see them comedically challenged, and sure, they can bicker and they can argue from time to time, but they can't challenge their marriage. You can't challenge those things about them. And when I say you can as a writer, but then you're running the risk of really poisoning your audience. And I liked the fact that they challenged, they didn't poison here to keep it back on Bridgerton. But again, the Colin being jealous as a writer, I just don't think is developed enough to really matter. And I think, although I understand it and I would agree with the plot point being, hey, we're in a man's world here. It's unfair for women inherently. And I completely understand those plot points and the thematic echoes that they always have throughout the episodes in those. I mean, obviously, Eloise is all about that as a character. I struggle with the development and how it was done. So, if there was far more of a focus on the writing aspect, and that's what the two of them really bonded over, and then he finds out if Colin finds out Penelope is Lady Whistledown, and then becomes incredibly jealous, and that challenges their relationship, I buy that if we build to it, but we didn't build to it. We kind of just got a little hint here and a little hint here, and then it was like, oh, do you think you're jealous of her? Like, no, I don't think that works. So that's inherently kind of what I say. It's a little underdeveloped. Otherwise, I really liked the vast majority of Bridgerton season 3. I love the fact that now we're playing with Lady Bridgerton. I love the fact that you're seeing different relationships of both younger and older people, and we're challenging the conventions of what is love in this time period, and different levels of relationship. We're going from someone who's pined for someone forever, and now they finally have it, and what do they do when they have it but it may be jeopardized, versus we now have Lady Bridgerton clearly falling for somebody else, and she has to deal with the survivor's guilt almost. She's a widow. What does she do? So I really appreciate those facts, as well as I loved all the God, I'm blanking on her name. It's gonna drive me crazy. Francesca. I loved the teases and the nods to Francesca and her now husband in that. The only problem is it's an obvious she's not passionately in love. She loves who he is, but she doesn't love the man actively. She clearly is. She's lesbian. She clearly has an affection for women, which no problem with that. We'll go with the classic Seinfeld line. Not that there's anything wrong with that. My only issue with that telling is not the fact that we have an LGBTQ plus character, because I love the work with the other Bridgerton brothers. I loved the work with same sex couples or relationships and the heterosexual characters. I thought it was all really well done. It's just they really built on this idea that there's more than one way to love a person. And Francesca had that with her partner. And then literally right at the end, once you get the payoff, it's no, I actually don't have that butterfly feeling. So it's kind of like, are you saying it's wrong to have a relationship like that? And there is only one way to love? Or are we not giving enough credence to the identity that Francesca has but we're not giving enough credence to her identity and showing some doubts that she may have, because then at least you could say there's a play and there's yard, there's strings to pull there. I felt, again, it was underdeveloped for my tastes. I loved the vast majority of the canvas that was painted in season 3. However, I think there's underdeveloped ideas that are problematic. And ironically, again, in a positive way, though. It was a fitting end. I don't know where you go from here. I don't read the Bridgerton books. Again, I would say, I guess now I'm a fan of Bridgerton. Didn't think I'd ever say that in 2024, but it's the year of exploration. We've become Swifties on this show. We've become Bridgerton fans on this show. I mean, shit, I'm watching a lot of stuff, listening to a lot of stuff, experiencing a lot of stuff that I would have told you beforehand. Not a fucking chance. And I'm enjoying it. So it's good. Um, but in a weird way, I think this is kind of the end. We now have, outside of Francesca's storyline, and moving up to Scotland, what are the payoffs? You could have said Eloise would be, if you want to say this was the end. Eloise not doing anything, always being all talk. Okay, well, she's going to move to Scotland. She's starting that path. So you at least could have said, that's one. Francesca marrying somebody and finding a different way to love somebody. Different than the hyper passionate Bridgerton marriages that we know. Okay. That's cool, different, positive. They have a payoff. You don't need Hyacinth and all the other younger Bridgertons to really get anything because they're background characters at this point. You know, Lady Bridgerton clearly has a direction now she's going to go explore. Lady Danbury has a direction. Queen Charlotte even has something. The big secret's out and everybody knows about it. We've got all these payoffs. You could have just said, it's done. No, I know Netflix doesn't want that. It's outside of Stranger Things, it's probably their most popular property. I mean, yeah. I mean, Bridgerton is probably Netflix's number 2 property outside of Stranger Things. But sometimes you end when you end. And I think this could have been a fitting. So it's a very interesting thing. So, Bridgerton, season 3. High quality stuff. Really enjoyed it. I think it's quite good. Maybe a little formulaic, but it's okay. But you want to say something formulaic, man? I'll give you something as well. If you want to help us out, you want to do something different, before we continue the show, I got to ask you something. Go check out our Etsy store for some formula here. Head on over to ptecreative.etsy.com. How about that transition for you? Nice and clunky. But if you head on over to ptecreative.etsy.com, you can go check out all this really cool merchandise. We got shirts, we got hats, we got hoodies, we got stickers, we got Pokemon mystery packs, we got all kinds of fun stuff here representing a bunch of the things that we love here on the channel. Pokemon and football and pieces of fiction and the great state of Wisconsin and trashing on the shittiest city in America, Philadelphia. Yes, I said it and yes, I meant it. Gotta love what we have over at ptecreative.etsy.com. Go check it out for yourself. And if you want to be supportive, just like so many characters in Bridgerton, go check out our Etsy shop. Go buy some merch for yourself. You will not regret it. It's good stuff, and I hope you will. How about that for a form? Nice and clunky. Nice and clunky transition. But we're just going to continue the show. We're going to keep rapping. We're going to keep going. We're going to go to the message board's number 1 hated show, Star Wars Acolyte. I am going to say something that half the world apparently is going to hate. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. Do I think it's the best piece of Star Wars ever created? No. It's kind of hard to outdo Empire Strikes Back or Mandalorian Season 2 or The Clone Wars or, in my opinion, Rebels. I think Rebels is one of the best things ever done. But The Acolyte is actually a pretty good show. Here's the comment I would give to it. This is a good show. I don't know if it's a good Star Wars show. Same thing. I've always said this about one particular movie. The first time, it's only happened to me a few times, but the first time I remember going to a movie theater and feeling absolutely gutted because a property I loved, a character I loved, a story I loved, was just not what I wanted it to be, was going in to watch Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. and I went 2 or 3 times because I was a kid. I was a kid in a town in Wisconsin with not much to do, and I didn't do a lot of partying or anything like that at the time. I've never done it in the first place, anyways. But straight edge as the day is long, and I'm a homebody who doesn't like people. It's the easiest way to say it. I like my people, but I'm not crazy about others sometimes. Um, but I remember vividly walking out and going, I liked it. And having to tell myself that over and over and over again. Because I really didn't understand how I felt. And this is what I always say about it to tie back to Acolyte. If you look at Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, you look at the acting, you look at the production, you look at the story, it's all pretty coherent. It makes sense. The acting's good. The action is great. There's still plenty of adventure. It's just not a good Indiana Jones movie because it doesn't have a feel. It doesn't capture the same magic. But if you just thought that guy was an adventurer, if you just thought Harrison Ford was just some random adventure guy in his 50s, and we were watching that, that is a perfectly fine, very good action adventure film. It's just not a good Indiana Jones film. That is what I would say. You can always say, oh, there's one little moment here, one moment. But I will argue until the day is long. Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is a good movie, not a good Indiana Jones movie. I would say the same thing about Acolyte. Is that Star Wars Acolyte is not a good Star Wars show. Thus far. But it's actually a pretty good show. There are characters that are intriguing and exciting. There is high quality action points. There is storytelling that you don't see coming. It's one thing about Star Wars here that is used well is that it plays with conventions of Star Wars in a successful way, in my opinion. Some ways it doesn't, but in some ways I think it does. I'm a big Star Wars fan. I love the fact that we're exploring different parts of the galaxy. I love the fact that there are different planets and different things. We're in a different time period. We're not in the fall of the Galactic Republic. We're not in that time period. We're in the High Republic times. We're getting towards the time. We're ramping up for what happens towards the downfall. But May and Osha are an interesting dynamic. It's not something I'm crazy about, but I at least think they're interesting. I like Osha. May, I clearly think, is a psychopath as of right now. Now, I'm recording this 2 hours after the Acolyte, or 2 hours prior to the Acolyte episode 4 release. But nonetheless, I want to make sure we got you a Tuesday show. But it's an interesting dynamic that I think is extremely worthwhile to explore. And there are interesting characters with good action, good visuals, coherent storytelling with a mystery that I am actually intrigued by. I want to know more. And the Coven of Witches using the Force in a different way, I adore. And the only thing I think it's super struggling with is this. I don't get the hate for it off the first 2 episodes. You're building to something. When we first saw Mandalorian season 1, or, episode 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian, I was intrigued. I liked it. I thought it was quite good. But I wasn't going to go out and say, oh, fucking Star Wars, man. I just went, okay, let's see where this goes. I'm enjoying this. It's fun to explore this part of the galaxy. I don't feel as pulled by the early episodes of Acolyte as I did by Mandalorian. However, I still think it's a quality show. Still think it's good. I just don't think it's a great Star Wars show. It feels kind of Star Wars adjacent-y. Because we lack that common tie to the Star Wars we know and love. But it's an interesting show. The one thing I will say about this show that I would say, in my opinion, I view as a negative. Others may think it's a great positive. It's something that other writers might actually laugh at me as someone who writes his own stuff. from time to time, which will be released on this channel soon. I could see a lot of people being like, "You're not a good enough writer. You don't challenge your own conventions." Okay, fine. I don't necessarily like the play of the Jedi being evil. I think the most successful variation of that is in the Clone Wars. But then you get 6-ish, 7-ish seasons of episodic television to display why the Jedi are failing. Why the Jedi are not inherently the best thing in the galaxy. They may be heroes, they're fighting for the best of the galaxy, but they're not all that good at it. But it's explained, it's understood. Here, what's really interesting is I think you are really trying to be pulled into the direction of the Jedi fucking suck. There are clearly problematic things about the Jedi. They're a religious order of monks. I'm not a big religious person. I am very far from a religious person. Teach their own. But to really go into them now flirting with the line of being so devout in their beliefs that it could at least be hinted at, or it could be highly suggested that they will kill, pillage, plunder, and just wreck anybody with any different viewpoint than their own is incredibly dangerous. And that's only been hinted at. It's clearly been shown that May at least started the fire, but how'd that fire get so fucking out of control to the point where it just looked like everyone was dead? And Saul didn't want to stop and even give Osha a moment. Clearly something else happened on Brendock. Spoilers, by the way. Sorry. Whatever. You knew this, so whatever. Clearly, something happened beyond just the fire. And it's already been insinuated we thought we were doing the right thing by the Jedi that was meditating for over a decade. So, are we led to believe then the Jedi straight up fucking murdered people for having a different view of the Force than they did? That's highly fucking problematic. And you could say, sure, that's very fair, and it's a very interesting take from a theory standpoint. I just don't think it's the best execution standpoint, and it's an idea that I think it does more harm than good. I think we're now at a point with Star Wars where we want to be challenged. They can toe the line, which is what I absolutely adored about Ahsoka. Ahsoka was finding her journey in the Force, understanding what the Jedi taught her was good, but understanding that it was problematic at the same time. She had to figure out the balance, which is why I loved Ahsoka. But here in Acolyte, there's outside of Soul, there is no character to really grip onto here and say, yeah, we know that guy's good. We know that woman's bad. We know that woman's good. Whatever. We don't have that outside of Soul. We know he's a good man that's haunted by his past. That's it. So we don't have a character to really grip onto and give them the benefit of the doubt yet. Right now, we're just supposed to be led with, yeah, they fucking suck. And I don't know if it's a necessarily productive idea for Star Wars The Acolyte. We're going to see where it all goes. This was obviously spoiler-filled for the first 3 episodes. However, you clicked on it with the title, so your problem, in my opinion. Yeah. Here you go. But I think that's where I am with Star Wars Acolyte. I think it's a good show. I'm intrigued to see where it goes. I just don't necessarily know if it's a great Star Wars show. But yeah, we'll see where that one goes. Now, I do have one more thing to ask you prior to going into our final thing here. However, if you're liking this show, if you like listening to my voice, which is crazy, but glad you do, or you like watching me look like a loon on camera, why don't you go check out our other stuff? Head on over to ptcreative.c.com to support the channel, monetarily speaking. But if you like the other stuff that we do, or you like this, go check out our other stuff. Monday, we have Pokemon card pack openings here on YouTube. If you are watching the YouTube channel, if you're on Spotify, head over to PT Creative on YouTube and do that. Tuesday, it's the ONETA show. You're already here. It's the flagship show, rotating topics of whatever we want to talk about. Wednesday, we're back to Pokemon and the Fakemon of the Helzari region. New Pokemon are introduced every single week. Thursday, it's the ONETA football show. We are in the midst of the 3-part How to Fix College or Time to Fix College Football series over on the ONETA football show. It's really fun, really big in-depth project that we did over there. So go check out the ONETA football show if you're a football fan. And Friday, it's the rotational shows. We got the ONETA adventure show to give you some suggestions on your next adventure. The ONETA brick builder show where you can see some really cool Lego builds as we go through. Or Pokemon card pack openings. We have Yu-Gi-Oh card pack openings. And now we've started doing some more Kana stuff as well. So go check out all of those and see what you like over at PTE Creative over on YouTube. And you can check out some little hints of that over on our socials as well. But check out our YouTube channel. It'll be fun for you. Go check it out. But back to our regularly scheduled programming. And now we are here to the show that many are most excited for. It's House of the Dragon. I am recording this 2 days after the release of episode 1. I don't know shit yet. I have not watched it because my wife just finished her medical residency. Congrats to you, babe. Love you. And it has been nothing but craziness and social events since, so I have not had the chance to sit down with her and get to watch House of the Dragon. However, we were left in a clearly interesting spot, and spoilers ahead before I talk. If you're interested in watching the House of the Dragon and you haven't yet, fucking figure it out, dude. Go watch it. But we're now left in a spot in which there is a war that cannot be reversed now. We are now at the point where we have Alicent and Rhaenyra will not forgive each other. They will never do that. They will never give up their power. They are now of the belief that everything they do is to protect their children. So now this is an all-out blood war, and their fucking gloves are off, and we're here to roast a motherfucker and kill him. That's what we're here for. Now, we know we have 2 more seasons after this, so we're not going to get the ultimate payoff here. However, we know characters are going to die, first and foremost. Second of all, it's just the way Game of Thrones in that universe. Second of all, we need to have another moment to really continue this as a personal rivalry. One of the things that's most engaging about House of the Dragon, which really turned me on to Game of Thrones. I was not a Game of Thrones watcher until I watched House of the Dragon. And people may say that crazy. I was one of those people for 10 years that was told, oh, you love Game of Thrones. And I just hated it just to hate it. And then I saw the last season, and then I hated it for a real reason. But I didn't see the whole payoff through the first 7 seasons either. So now I understand why they did the things they do, why people loved the show. I love the show now. House of the Dragon is really what got me in because it was such a intensely personal focused story. One of the things that's very hard sometimes about Game of Thrones is there are so many characters early on that there are some things that don't feel as important. Now they feel better at the end because it's more of a payoff, but early on, one of the things that could be criticized is we're adding so many pieces within the first 2 seasons and third season especially that why do we give a shit? Why do we care? And they clearly achieved it, but it's a little bit more difficult. House of the Dragon was immediately, within a couple episodes, just said, here are 2 bad bitches. They fucking hate each other because they both love and respect somebody. One, it's their birthright. One married into it and believes she's restoring the honor of their house. What do you do? They both believe they're right. They're both bitches to each other. And they're both fucking badasses in a way. So what do? They're going to fight. They're going to argue. And right when you think maybe we might have some peace, and you know there's no peace, that dying ass motherfucker had to open his mouth and ruin everything. And then it became, I'm protecting my sons, and I'm protecting my daughters, and I'm protecting everybody the best way I know how, and that means eliminate all those other motherfuckers. That's what that was. So you need another moment to continue this, getting away from this becoming a political theory drama of what is the best for the land by just saying, oh, my birthright, or oh, my right as lord, or my right as queen regent. Instead of that shit, you need a highly, highly personal moment in which both are at fault in some way, shape, or form. You need a moment where somebody who cares, somebody both sides at least love and respect in some way, shape, or form, dies because of both their actions. And they can both go, that's your fault, now that's your fault. And cross wires and do that. So, or we need one of those big badass generals to come through and go the way of the fucking dodo. So, I mean, I could really see by the end of this season Damon dying. I think that would achieve that because one side would think, oh, we've taken out the snake. We're doing this for everybody. Damon's the biggest threat. And one side can say, you took away our best. And you did it in a way that nobody respects. And now we will hunt you until the day we die. I think Damon could achieve that. Eventually you stop I don't say you stop caring about children, but in Game of Thrones world, there's so many goddamn kids. Like, eventually if you kill one of them, unless you really build to that moment, doesn't really matter. I could see, oh god, what's her name? It's gonna drive me crazy. The aunt that never got the throne even though she should have. I could see her going. Could it be impactful? Both sides respect her in some way. She plays the middle to a degree. I could see that happening and being worthwhile to push it forward. So those are characters I could see going the way of the dodo. And I think that's really necessary for this show because you have to keep the personal stakes involved. This is no different than a sports rivalry. This is no different than professional wrestling even. People care about personal stories. Why do you think we all love gossip? Why do you think people care about celebrity gossip, whether they like it or not? Why do you think people love the fucking rabbit hole of Reddit and Reddit stories? I've gone down the rabbit hole. I can't fucking leave, even though I think it's all absurd. Because personal issues sell stories. Personal issues drive stories. They drive interest. That's what matters. It's not necessarily high, lofty goals. Very few stories can do theory and lofty goals of good versus evil. It's personal stories that drive things. This is a big time fight. UFC fights aren't made because big star, boom. Those sell. I'm not saying they don't. But what really sells is when you have big star, they both fucking hate each other and they're going to punch each other in the fucking face. That shit sells. If you want to look back to pro wrestling, the WWE is the hottest it's ever been, business-wise. But it's the hottest it's been in over 20 years. Why? Because they built a highly personal story for years while still building another character that people could get invested in and love. They made it a personal issue and rivalry between the two of them. Finally, the good guy fucking won. And The dragon was slayed, so to speak, and the WWE has been riding that since WrestleMania and before WrestleMania. Now, that's how stories are built. That's how stories are told for interest. Personal issues drive that shit. You need that involved. So I think one of those highly respected big targets needs to go to make this more fuel to the fire of a personal rivalry. So that's my predictions for it. Obviously, someone's going to die. We all know that. Multiple people are going to die in this show. But one of the big guns has got to go. Gots to go. For my opinion, this show to thrive. That is my prediction for House of the Dragon Season 2. We'll get to see that over the next 8-10 weeks, however many episodes there are, over on HBO. Which I think, as long as my wife gets home on time, I'll be watching House of the Dragon tonight. We're going to see how that all goes. But that has been a deep dive into modern television right now on the ONETA show today. I hope you really enjoyed this show. Once again, if you did, help us out. Go place a product order over at ptecreative.etsy.com, which would be super, super cool. So go to ptecreative.etsy.com and get a sticker, get a hat, get a hoodie, get a t-shirt, whatever works for you. Or a Pokemon mystery pack if you're into that kind of thing. Go check it out over at ptecreative.etsy.com. Apologies for the voice towards the end. A little under the weather. Go check out the rest of our stuff over on YouTube. Monday through Friday, we got a rotating bevy of great stuff over there. Go check it out. There's something for everybody. Please stay tuned for more updates to that. And as always, hit us with a like, a comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell. But make sure you're subscribed if you're watching this on the reg. I really would appreciate it. It gets the stats up. It helps us know what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. Comment and share this with as many people as you possibly can. If you're on Spotify listening, leave us a review. That helps us learn as well. So whatever we can do to learn and get better, that's what we want to do over here. Because we, not just me, we of PT Creative, I'm really excited. We're building some really cool shit. So want to be able to share that and get to the most amount of people, but so make this project worthwhile for you. And as always, check out our socials, Instagram, TikTok for cool stuff. That is going to do it here, folks, for this edition of the ONETA Show, brought to you by PTE Creative. As always, I'm your host, Evan Davies, and it has been an honor and a joy and a privilege to talk to you on the internet. Peace.